So that's the order of speakers. After Bill speaks, all the speakers will come up here, sit down. Their technology providers will join them. That's Drew, Mark, and Kevin. They'll join us all up here, and we'll be open to Q&A. Some ARC folks will be running around with the microphone. I think that will be Preet, who's our AV person this session. You'll be able to ask questions of the audience after Bill speaks. All right. I love to show this slide. It's not often you get to show a $250,000 car that's a Bentley on fire. So what's the impact of poor asset management? Why do we need smart asset management? Well, the key aspect is unplanned downtime, preventing unplanned downtime. What's the result of unplanned downtime? Number one is lost revenue and shorter asset life. Those two things affect the key metrics of your C-suite, your CEO, et cetera, president, et cetera, because those things affect the P&L statement and the balance sheet. So my key recommendation, which I will again make later on, is if you want to financially justify smart asset management, use lost revenue, shorter asset life. That'll get executive attention because it's in their KPIs. Too often I see people use improving the efficiency of maintenance, which really converts to fewer maintenance technicians. That's always a tough justification. And usually the maintenance technicians are not laid off when your project is done. So when the financial guys do an audit of your project, you lose credibility because there was no real savings. All right? Lost revenue, shorter asset life. And of course, unplanned downtime can cascade into other issues. Often safety and environmental incidents have their origin in unplanned downtime. And of course, depending on the industry, what term you want to use, are going to affect quality yield and drive rework. All bad things. All right. This is just some examples of what unplanned downtime means in terms of impacting lost revenue. The one in the upper left-hand corner, when the compressor goes down, that it's used to separate the water and sand from the crude oil. When that goes down, you can't extract oil, and each incident in the case study that I wrote up was $20 million in revenue loss, as an example. So, this is here kind of to give a little bit of a definition of what we mean by smart asset management. All right? There are these stovepipes, or silos, depending on what term you like to use, that exist. And each one of those silos tend to have their own data, have their own documentation, have their own business processes, and sometimes even have their own separate asset hierarchy. So it becomes difficult to work across those functions. So smart asset management involves having common data and documentation across those silos so that you can have business process automation among them and higher efficiency. And that involves data-driven maintenance, common engineering, and for the critical assets, monitoring the asset health so you can have predictive maintenance, as an example. And I like to make these a little bit more concrete. What do I mean by business process automation across those silos? And this is kind of a simple example. You've got equipment in operations, you got data IT has in the cloud, you got a maintenance planner with your EAM system, and you got maintenance technicians. And those often are separated with manual systems going between them, meaning somebody gives somebody a phone call or something like that, or sends an email. And what we would recommend, ARC would recommend, is that data goes automatically up to the cloud. You have some predictive maintenance applications up there for your critical assets. A flag goes to your maintenance planner that does some triage and sets priority. That becomes a work order that usually inspection to start off onto a mobile device so that the maintenance person, the technician, can process that work order while they're doing the work. That means the data in your EAM system, it becomes much higher quality, and people start to trust the EAM system and use it for planning work orders. So this is an example of that business process automation that goes across many of the silos in your typical plant operations. So, last slide of mine before we turn it over to the next speaker. Smart asset management. I think the core of smart asset management is to have common data and common documentation across the silos so that one silo isn't using an out-of-rev document, an old document, another one is using more current documentation, the old one causing rework or discontinuities between the group. It is said that engineers often spend 30% of their time looking for the most current document. If you have a good documentation management system, data management system, that 30% is vastly reduced and you have much higher engineering productivity. And the quote I like in the bottom is, when everyone has the same information and they typically come to similar conclusions, conflicts decline, and the business becomes easier to manage. All right? So, justifying this, I want to reiterate this, justifying this should not be based on having fewer maintenance technicians or better use of spare parts. The best justification that gets executive attention is when you talk about reducing unplanned downtime and increasing revenue and reducing the cost of the asset on the balance sheet, which means having the asset last longer. Revenue and asset longevity make for much better financial justifications. And it'll probably improve your career prospects because finally the CEO will have somebody in operations who understands their metrics.